Welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to pop in today to explain a little bit about how I read and what I read for pleasure and for also just for whatever I need for classes, as I'm an English teacher. So I just want to see, like, how do I do it? What do I read? How do I read it? And I already did a video about Moby Dick. You can see all my tabs and things. So I am a very active reader, which I think is useful as a teacher. Well, I want a very kind of a not so secret thing about me is that I love fantasy. The fantasy genre is one of my favorites. It has been since I was a child. I cut my teeth on Anne McCaffrey, which is the Pern series and Lord of the Rings and things like that. I loved cartoon or movies that had to do with fantasy, anything like that. So I read one fantasy in a month book. They're usually longer, so I just read one. And this week I'm reading, and I will put a picture of it. I don't have a physical copy. It's in digital copy of the Bitter Twin from the Winnowing Fire trilogy by Jen Williams. Very good trilogy. I love it so far. In the second book, and it's wonderful. I also read one classic a month, and this month is The Great Expectations. Last month was Moby Dick, which I'm buddy reading with a friend, which is wonderful. I have read a couple of chapters of this so far, and I like it. It's interesting, much more readable than I thought it would be. And this is only my second Dickens, as I've only read A Christmas Carol. So I'm excited to get into Dickens and see his prose and what everyone is crazy about. So, and as an English teacher, I had to keep my cred. I need to read more Dickens. So here we go. I didn't have to read it in high school, unfortunately. So I'm a little bit behind. Here we go. And I also read a poetry collection. In poetry, we have, this month is Mary Oliver, Devotions. It is about nature and is in the same vein as a lot of Emily Dickinson, which I also love. A nature that leads to spirituality, which I love. But if you're not a very spiritual person, if you not interested in religion, you can still enjoy this as like a devotion to nature and the appreciation for nature. So that's one thing I really, really love about it. And I think I will read to you one of my favorite poems. Actually, I'll just read the beginning. The whole thing is a little long. So, one day you finally knew what you had to do and begun through the voices around you, kept shouting their bad advice. Through the whole house began to tremble and you felt the whole tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried, but you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Through the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations. And I think that that's part of the poem called The Journey. And I think it's, you can see my highlights here. I think that it's a beautiful journey of talking about listening to your own voice and not letting people who don't understand your vision, your journey, hinder you. And I think it's a beautiful, beautiful poem, and I like the way it is written. So that's what I do. I read a couple of poems every morning, and then I read chapters of a classic, and then I devour my fantasy book. So this gives me kind of a much more broad range of reading, and which I really love because I don't get bored. So, always reading. If you have any questions about what I read, any questions and any suggestions for things to read, that would be wonderful. So let me know. And that is all I wanted to say. And if you're interested in doing any kind of read-alongs or doing reading sprints with me, let me know. I'd be more than happy to try to schedule those. So thank you. Have a wonderful day. And as always, have a wonderful adventure with reading.